Hi, and welcome. I am Dr. Toya Davis, and this is Aligned, Liberated, and Abundant. And I am so happy that you are here with me today. This show is for high achieving women who have done all of the things that society and parents and all of the people have said that we were supposed to do, that we've been taught to do, that we thought would be enough. And yet here we are feeling like there's more, right? There's more peace that we can have. There's more joy. There's more abundance. There's just more, right? I'm recognizing that the feeling of overwork and overwhelm are not really where it's at. So this show is for you. Today, I am going to take us on the personal journey. The topic is they said I wouldn't make it, and just a little bit about me. I'm from Miami, Florida. Grew up there. Left Miami to go to college. Went to Florida Agricultural Mechanical University. FAMU, go Rattlers, in Tallahassee, and came there in 96, and then just kind of stayed. Right, stayed in Tallahassee until my mom got sick she got sick in 2010 or 2009, and we moved back to Miami to help kind of support my mom after that, but I'd been in Tallahassee for a while. So, but I wanted to bring the larger part of this story takes place in Miami, right? We know that your environment really has a direct impact on kind of how you show up and how you experience and how we function in today, right? The person we are today is the culmination of all of the experiences and events that we've had up until this moment, right? That is just really that simple, right? I am who I am now because of the things that have happened to me and the ways that I have chosen to experience them in the past. And so part of my kind of driver, my motivator, my like how I got here really has to do with the narrative of what happens to little Black girls coming out of Miami. And one of the things, if you're not from Miami, people are always like, "Oh, what part of Miami are you from? Like, did you live in Liberty City? Did you live here? Did you live in Carroll City, Opelika, North Miami?" I'm like, "No, I actually lived in Miami," right? It was called unincorporated Dade County. There was no, other city or title that had kind of adopted us or incorporated us. But if we look at kind of the bookends or the bookmarkers for kind of where I lived, again, for more context, if you're from that area or I went to Miami Central for high school. I went to Horace Mann for middle school, but I actually was zoned for Madison. Horace Mann, I was in the magnet program, so I caught the bus over to go to Horace Mann, but it was the next school. So it wasn't like I was on some, crazy far voyage to go to school, but Horace Mann had the computer magnet program. And the day that I was set to go and visit Madison for the kind of the middle school tour, a riot broke out at the school. And my mom was like, "Yeah, no, we're not doing this. So let me figure out a way to get you someplace else." And so I ended up at Horace Mann, which we still had riots, right? We still had riots and lockdowns and all of the things, but they had the computer magnet program. So I was able to experience that. But Miami in the 80s was a rough place, right? And if you were in that kind of I don't even know what to call it, in that the non-idealized parts of Miami, there was a certain mindset. There is a certain kind of a way that we just do business, right? What the established norms there really say that this is it, right? This is it. This thing that you see, the people, the environment, like this is it, right? The corner store, the people that hang out on the corner or hang out at the corner store, right? Those people have been there forever. And then you see the young people start hanging out the corner store. There are still people to this day that if I go home, like, and I know that there are certain people that I want to see, I can stop at a particular place, right? A particular tree, a particular park, or whatever, and those people will be there. And that's, that's their lot, that's their choice in life. So this is not about judgment. Know that this is not about judgment. This is very much understanding that we all have different walks, paths, and again, the person we are today is based on the choices and the experiences that we've had in the past, right? So this notion of being an overachiever, right? Even us claiming and being these overachieving women, particularly overachieving Black women, is a response. It is a response to indoctrination and patterns and things that we were taught, ways that we needed to kind of be, right, in our earlier years. And that has just transferred over into our adult life, right? For me, growing up in that environment where the expectation of a young Black girl living in those areas was that you would be pregnant, you would be a high school dropout, and you weren't going to college, right? You would, you date the guys with money, you fall into that life, and that's the path. Whatever that path looks like, that's what it was. And for me, I knew that that wasn't it, right? One of the and I knew that that wasn't it. And my mom was also very clear about, no, we're not doing that. And so one of the ways that she knew to protect me from kind of falling into that space was to keep me active, right? It was to keep me active. So I really didn't have free time because, the idle mind is the devil's workshop type of thing, right? So it was like, if I can keep you doing something, or if I can keep you in activity, if I can keep you here, I don't have to worry about what happens when you are home. Because I was a latchkey kid, right? My mom worked for the post office, and so she would be at work when I came home. I would walk home, let myself, it's the 80s, right? Again, let myself in the house, stay there until she came home. And so she realized somewhere in there, okay, wait, we have to do something with this time. And so, I've always been in the drama club, like literally multiple things throughout the day to fill the time until she got home. And so one, that in and of itself, right? So if you're high achiever, I want you to think back to your childhood, right? What did that look like? What did your time, what was your time allocation, right? What did that look like? What was the expectation around how you needed to be and show up in all of these different spaces? And I bet if you take a look back, you can say, oh, wait, no, I see how this pattern that I'm living out now actually began a lot earlier in my life. Okay. So I was always overbooked, essentially. I was always overbooked. Being at home to just sit, relax, and do nothing wasn't really an option, right? Even if I was home, you're cleaning, right? We have our Saturday morning rituals. So cleaning, all of that stuff before you can go outside, all of the things. Between fifth grade and sixth grade, I'm going to say developed, right? My body went from, oh, look at the little girl, to, whoa, what's happening? So when I transitioned from my elementary school to my middle school, and again, remind you, now I'm bused, so I'm going someplace different. Sometimes we would miss the bus, have to walk. I worked at my uncle's shop, who owned a store in Liberty City. I would work there on the weekends, so I would catch the Metro bus sometimes to go to work, and then on Sundays we would all go out. So busing, right? And I am developing. So again, this is another layer of the expectation, because somehow in people's mind, I somehow contributed to how my body had just kind of developed, right? And because I somehow played into this, this butt and these things that were happening in the small ways, that I then now again fit more firmly into the stereotype of what happens when you look a particular way. And it never made sense to me right? But what I was clear about was it's not going to be me, right? I refused to buy into the fact that because I was Black, because I was a little girl, or because I was a girl, because I was, if you're listening to me on the podcast, you don't see my air quotes, but because I was, fine, as they would say, that my direction and path was laid out. And particularly if that direction and path had to do with being a high school dropout, becoming pregnant, and essentially dating a dope boy. Right. I rejected that as my reality, despite the fact that my environment was very clear that that should have been my path. Right. And when we think about why and where we are, there's typically some motivator factor in there. And for me, the driving thing was I'm going to prove people wrong. Right. It probably had a bit to do with the how dare you tell me what to do nature of myself in general. Right. I am very much my friend tells me, one of my friends used to tell me I'm contrary, right? If you tell me to go right, I'm going to go left just because you told me to go right. So there is a bit of you don't get to tell me what to do. So my desire to prove them wrong could have been rooted in like you don't get to tell me what to do, or it could have just been rooted in the fact that for whatever, one of the things that I always say growing up is that for whatever reason, my family, my support system, I felt like they were like, no, you were not like I was I was in the protective bubble, right? It was like, nope, you're gonna do something else. You're gonna make it out. You're gonna do this other thing. And because of that, I was just shielded in a lot of ways. It literally like if something was gonna happen, like if they were about to go and do something crazy, like they would literally drop me off. I remember this one time in Miami back in that day, we used to go to, it was called Liberty City Flea Market. It's closed down now. But it was a great place. It was a great place to be. Right. All types of shenanigans and foolery would happen there. And on the weekends, there was a DJ called Uncle Al, and he would DJ at the flea market. And so people would come out, just all of the things, right? People would come out dancing, DJing, and you're walking around. And so me and my cousins and I, we would catch the bus there on the Sunday and hang out after we got off from work. And we would catch the bus back to my grandma's. She lived in Liberty City. We would catch the bus back. My family is a bit rowdy. For the lack of a better word, right? But I remember this one time we were getting on the bus and my cousin, one of my older cousins, had done something that he knew he knew he was about to get in trouble. I don't know if we got on the bus and he saw like police getting on the bus. I don't quite remember how he identified that something was about to happen. I just remember him being like, Toya, get off the bus. Right. And I'm sitting there like, but no, like I came with y'all. How you gonna put me off the bus? Right. And I remember him being so clear and so adamant that I just ultimately I did it. Right. I got off the bus and it turned into a whole thing. I mean, I don't quite remember the details of what he had done and all of that stuff, but it was like those types of instances where I look back and I say, me being able to actually make it out of that. Yes, it had to do with me being very clear that I was not going to fall into the stereotype, but also something in me, and it could have been my intention, right? Me setting that intention then allowed all of the other energies and the conspirators in my environment to support that intention. That could have absolutely been the case, right? But for whatever reason, it was always like, no, go, stop, stay, no, don't come, that type of thing, when something could have gone wrong or potentially happened. But here we are. So motivating factor, right? I was like, I'm not going to be pregnant, not dropping out of school, and I will not just be in Miami, right? And so those became my motivators. And because of that it's like, how you go to the opposite end of the spectrum, right? So instead of being the dropout, like in order to not be the dropout, or in order to not be the one who doesn't finish school, I have to go really, really hard. right? I graduated number 4 in my class, right? Of a class of like almost 500 people, graduated number 4 in my class, complete opposite end of the spectrum, right? Didn't want to have a baby. So did not have sex while I was in school. I was in college because the only way to assure that I do not get pregnant, right? And prove people right is to not have sex. Because things happen, condoms break, like all of the things, right? So as a child, I was drastically aware of all of these things. And because I was so adamant about proving people wrong, anything that could have potentially put me in the position to prove them right, I absolutely did not engage. Right? So, did that. Okay, great. Boom. So, no pregnant, great. Gonna work hard in school, graduated top of the class, boom, check. Now the other one, people stay here in Miami. Oh, wait, once you get here, it's hard to leave, right? Remember, I told you those same people I saw on the corners, I can go back there today. They right there. Right. So when the opportunity for various schools and stuff came for me to attend, I was just clear. I gotta leave, right? I gotta leave. And at that time, I used to organize college tours. I was a part of this group called FCAA, Florida Christian. I don't remember FCAA. But I was like the president, or I don't remember. But I used to organize college tours. Is the whole point. And so would do kind of this circuit of HBCUs. And so in that, I got to experience a lot of different colleges in a lot of different states and cities and all of that stuff. But when you're from Central and you're in the band, you're kind of programmed and predispositioned to go to FAMU. So here I made the choice to come to FAM. Go Rattlers, love it, right? Wouldn't change it for the world. But all of that to say is I don't know that had I had the expectation for me to not succeed. Wait, how am I trying to say it? I don't know if the expectation for me were not to fail, if I would have succeeded so well, right? Because again, my response to the thing of somebody telling me this is what you're going to do is to automatically go full tilt the other way. So that pushed me into this like must succeed at all costs type of things. Now, as an adult, right, as a person who looks at kind of where traumas are embedded in us, where we are acting outside of our true nature because of something or some experience that we've had, and really being about showing up in your authentic and true self. What I recognize is that really my aligned version of myself is freedom. That is the underlying core of who I am and how I show up in the world. And anything that that threatens my ability to have freedom of choice, freedom of speech, freedom of anything that threatens that is where I get activated. So again, I think for me, it was, the people saying you can't do this. I'm like, how dare you tell me, how dare you tell me what I'm going to do. Right. But I didn't understand that correlation. So I say this to say, this is my long story to say this to everybody, that like sometimes the thing that fuels you, or the thing that fuels us, right? I'm not going to exclude myself from this conversation. The thing that fuels us is a fuel because it is actually still wired into kind of your cosmic makeup, so to speak, right? We don't understand it. We can't put words to it, but there is a spark and a driver that happens when something occurs, because that spark or that driver ignites an aspect of your true soul self. So I mentioned mine is freedom. That is at the core of my kind of energetic archetype. If you're interested in understanding your energetic archetypes, I offer Soul Blueprint sessions where we dive into kind of understanding who you are and how you are designed to be in this lifetime, right? So in understanding that aspect of myself, I absolutely can look back over time and say, this thing was in direct conflict with how I'm designed. And so, in my limited knowing of how to not fall into alignment with it, I went this way, right? This point in time, this thing happened. Somebody said this, and I was like, nope, that goes against, you're trying to control me. You're trying to do this thing, right? And so I offer to you to reflect back on your life. And it doesn't have to be like, reflect back on key moments or a particular something that you're doing or something that you wanted, right? Reflect back on that and see if you can identify that motivator. What was the thing that kicked you off down this new path, down this road, that continued to be the fuel and the fire for you? And once you understand, or once you find that idea, dig a little bit deeper in there and try to say, okay, what underlying energies do I think? So not the top level. So with the example that I gave, the top level for me would be um, just not wanting to be the statistic, right? Not wanting to feed into the stereotypical way that I would be. That would be the top layer. But if I dig a little bit deeper into that, right? Why didn't I want to be a statistic? Because there are people who are absolutely fine with being a statistic, right? So why didn't I want to be a statistic? Why did that bother me? Why did I choose to go about not being a statistic in the way that I did? When you start to dig into that, you start to uncover aspects of kind of, again, that true self, right? So that you can find that alignment, and then you can begin to apply that to other things. Because now that I understand the underlying why, I don't need the layers of, like, I don't have to go through I don't have to go through the layers of unconscious work to achieve that same thing, because I'm very aware of the driver. I can create the driver within myself at any moment to get me to the thing that I need, right? I no longer need the external impetus in order for me to kind of activate that aspect within myself to do the thing that I need to do, right? I don't need the hard lesson, the external hard lesson, right? Or I don't need to repeatedly be in the lesson to understand it, because I understand, I've learned to identify the underneath, the undergirding of whatever it is. And so my offering to you is, like I said, to find a space and time, point period in life, where you're like, no, wait, that thing became the driver for this thing. And then dig into that and say, why was that the driver? Why did I respond that way? Right? How has that helped me? How has that hurt me? How has that hindered me? And then from there, you can distill the nuggets in how to apply that to into future things. All right. So I hope that, one, you've enjoyed learning a little bit about me and this story, right? I always say Miami was a great place to grow up. Wouldn't change it for the world. Absolutely would not want to do it again, though. Right? It definitely creates a layer of hardening that probably aspects of that I still haven't shaken. I don't really know that I want to shake, right? I appreciate my ability to kind of be able to be in, I would like to say, anywhere in the world. Like, I feel like I can survive anywhere in the world, right? Because of those traits and characteristics and skill sets that I had to develop in order to, one, not only be that statistic of pregnant dropout and in Miami, not only be that statistic, but to also not be the statistic of, all of the other things that were happening in Miami in the 80s, right? You develop a keenness and a sense of awareness that allows you to thrive in that environment. And so I am definitely appreciative of all of those things. And the work that I do for myself now is understanding kind of when I'm operating in that learned, I'm going to call it trauma response, right? When I'm operating in that learned trauma response versus naturally when I'm just defaulting, to that learned trauma response versus when I actually need to kind of pull out that skill or that way of being in that moment, right? It's being able to learn when I'm living in fight and flight fight or flight versus when I only need to activate fight or flight in a particular moment. Right. So hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about me. Hope that you are able to, or my intention is that you are able to kind of identify a motivator for you. And like I said, dig a little bit deeper into that. And also in that motivator and our overachievingness of it all, identify kind of where that impetus for that overachievingness comes from, right? And then give yourself a little permission at this moment to say, you know what? I don't have to be overbooked because one, an idle mind is not the devil's workshop, right? An idle mind is actually a wonderful place to be, to recharge, to regroup, to get in flow and to get in alignment. And I can allow myself that, right? One. Two, I don't need to protect myself from doing something. I don't need to create all of these other things to protect myself from doing this other thing. I am a grown, fully developed and functional person who can create choices and things like that, right? So again, kind of understanding the why you show up as the overachiever, right? It was the parental expectation of if you don't get all of the good grades, you're not going to get into the best college. Sis, you're in college, right? You done graduated, right? If you don't do this, you're not going to get the best job. Sis, you got the job, right? So identifying why that also shows up is a way to kind of help to kind of unravel all of this. So remember, you deserve to live a life that lights you up from the inside out. And I would love to help you on that journey. Until next time, stay aligned, liberated, and abundant. Peace.